Let's go Broncos! Something very interesting is happening inside the Denver Broncos organization right now, and I don't think enough people are paying attention to what it could mean for this team's future. Because while most fans are focused on the biggest names, some of the most important developments coming out of OTAs involve players whose roles may be much larger than anyone expected just a few months ago. And here's what caught my attention. The Broncos coaching staff appears to have made a decision regarding one young defender that could dramatically impact the defense this season. At the same time, one of the most respected leaders in the locker room just revealed the type of mentality that's spreading throughout the offense. And when you combine those developments with what we're now seeing from the running back room, a very intriguing picture begins to emerge. The more information that comes out of OTAs, the more it feels like this roster has greater depth, more competition, and more internal confidence than many people realized. But here's the big question. Could some of the most important players for the Broncos this season be names that aren't getting nearly enough attention right now? Because if the early signs from OTAs are accurate, several players may be preparing for breakout seasons that could completely change expectations for this team. And trust me, one particular position group is starting to generate a lot of excitement behind the scenes. Before we get into all the details, make sure you've already hit the like button if you believe the Denver Broncos are heading toward a special season. And I want every optimistic Broncos fan watching right now to leave this comment below. Go Broncos! The future is bright in Denver. Personally, my favorite part of everything we're hearing from OTAs isn't one individual player. It's the overall attitude. The coaching staff seems focused on development. Veteran leaders are talking about team success instead of personal statistics. Young players are fighting for opportunities. And multiple position groups appear deeper than they were a year ago. In my opinion, that's exactly the type of environment you want to see if you're trying to build a team capable of competing at a high level. Now let's talk about the OTA development involving Jonah Ellis, because what the Broncos appear to have decided could tell us a lot about their plans for the defense moving forward. Personally, I love what I'm hearing from OTAs so far. Not because of any one individual player, but because of the overall theme. Competition, development, selflessness. Those are the ingredients that strong teams are built on. When players are embracing their roles, coaches are finding ways to maximize talent, and the locker room is focused on winning rather than statistics. That's usually a very good sign. One of the biggest questions surrounding the Broncos throughout the offseason was whether Jonah Ellis would eventually make a full-time transition away from his role on the edge. There was plenty of discussion about his versatility, his athletic profile, and whether Denver might experiment with him in different spots across the defense. But based on the latest information coming out of OTAs, it appears the Broncos have made their decision. Jonah Ellis is expected to remain primarily at outside linebacker, with only occasional opportunities to move inside in specific packages. And honestly, that decision says a lot about how highly the coaching staff views his ability as a pass rusher. According to the discussion surrounding OTAs, Sean Payton believes Ellis is simply too valuable on the edge to permanently move away from the position where he has already proven he can be effective. When you think about it, that should excite Broncos fans. Because the easiest mistake a coaching staff can make is trying to get too creative with a young player who already does something well. Sometimes the best move is letting talented players continue developing in the role that got them to the NFL in the first place. And that's exactly what appears to be happening here. The expectation now is that Ellis will receive more opportunities and more snaps as his role continues to grow. There is a belief that his production can increase significantly if he remains healthy and receives a larger workload. More importantly, Denver clearly sees him as a valuable piece of the defensive rotation moving forward. But here's what makes this story even more interesting. The decision to keep Ellis primarily on the outside may also tell us something about another area of the roster. It suggests that the Broncos are increasingly comfortable with some of the younger options developing at inside linebacker. That might be one of the most overlooked developments coming out of OTAs right now. Several young linebackers have reportedly been generating positive attention during practices, and the coaching staff appears encouraged by what they are seeing. If those players continue progressing, it could give Denver more flexibility throughout the season and strengthen one of the position groups that many fans were monitoring closely entering the offseason. Meanwhile, on the offensive side of the ball, Courtland Sutton delivered comments that reveal a lot about the culture inside the locker room. One of the most talked about subjects remains the addition of Jalen Waddle. Naturally, people are wondering how the arrival of another major weapon could impact target distribution throughout the offense. But Sutton's response was exactly what fans want to hear from a veteran leader. His focus wasn't on personal statistics. His focus was on winning. The message was simple. If sharing opportunities with Jalen Waddle helps the Broncos reach their goals, then that's what matters most. According to the discussion, Sutton emphasized that the locker room is filled with players who are willing to put personal pride aside in order to do what is best for the team. That type of mindset is incredibly important. Championship caliber teams are rarely built around players demanding individual numbers. They're built around players embracing roles. They're built around players trusting each other. And they're built around players understanding that team success ultimately creates individual success. Those comments from Sutton may not generate the biggest headlines, but they tell you a lot about the mentality inside the building. Then there's another storyline that continues gaining momentum, Davis Webb. The praise surrounding Webb keeps growing. According to comments discussed from multiple players and coaches, there is tremendous respect for his football knowledge and understanding of the offense. One description that stood out referred to him as a mad scientist, highlighting how highly people within the organization view his preparation and intelligence. And when you continue hearing the same praise from different people throughout the organization, it's hard not to pay attention. Because eventually those compliments stop sounding like off-season optimism and start sounding like genuine confidence. The really fascinating part is that all of these storylines seem connected. Young players developing, veteran leaders embracing team-first mentalities, coaches showing confidence in specific players, an offense that appears excited about its new additions, a defense that continues trying to find ways to improve. Taken together, it paints the picture of a team that believes it is building towards something significant. And we haven't even gotten to perhaps the most intriguing OTA development involving the running back room, where several players are already creating excitement and showing signs that Denver may have assembled one of its. The running back room may actually be one of the most underrated storylines developing in Denver right now. While much of the attention this offseason is focused on the receiving core, defensive improvements, and roster additions, the early observations coming out of OTAs suggest the Broncos could be building something very interesting in the backfield. And what's fascinating is that each player appears to bring something completely different to the table. According to the observations discussed in the source material, J.K. Dobbins stood out as the smoothest and most natural runner among the group during drills. Everything appeared effortless. His movements looked controlled, balanced, and efficient. That's exactly what you would expect from a veteran player who understands how to maximize every movement on the field. Then you have R.J. Harvey. What immediately jumped out during the drills was his quickness. His footwork and change of direction ability continue to generate attention, and that explosiveness remains one of the most intriguing elements of his game. The Broncos appear to have a player capable of creating opportunities in space and forcing defenders to make difficult decisions in open field situations. And then there is Jonah Coleman. If Harvey brings quickness and Dobbins brings experience and fluidity, Coleman appears to bring power. Early impressions suggest he looked like the strongest and most physically imposing back among the group. While it's impossible to fully evaluate physical running styles during OTA drills, his build and overall presence certainly caught attention. When you step back and look at the entire picture,